Hello and welcome to Piwik PRO YouTube video series. In this video, we will explore the built-in reports available in Piwik PRO platform. So, what we're gonna learn today? You'll discover how to efficiently move through various reports to find the insights you need, understand the specific objectives, purpose behind each report, and as a result, appreciate the extensive range of data Piwik PRO can provide, offering you a comprehensive view of your analytics landscape. Okay, first, let me show you how you can find built-in reports in Piwik PRO Analytics. So first, you need to make sure you are within the Analytics module. So click on Menu and click on the Analytics. You are in the Analytics module when you see Piwik PRO logo and then Analytics right next to it. So that might be obvious, but in case you're lost, you now know how to navigate to Analytics. Secondly, before we jump to any reports, we need to make sure that we're looking at the appropriate data. So we need to choose an appropriate property, or also called site and app or website in Piwik PRO. So this is the list. Make sure you're clicking on the appropriate one. And then once you do that, you can click on Reports tab, which is where you will find built-in reports. As the name of the section suggests, audience is all about visitors. The very first report, Audience Overview, provides us with the top-level data, top-level metrics that can show us in a glance what is happening on our website, meaning in any given date range, which in our case is year 2022, we can see how many visitors we've had, how many sessions, i.e. visits, how many page views, how many conversions, and what was the conversion rate, the average conversion rate for all goals in a given year, events per session, so average number of interactions in a visit, and percentage of returning visitors. Below we can see number of sessions, because this is the metric that was clicked. I can click visitors to add visitors to my line chart. But I could also unclick sessions to keep the visitors on my line chart. They're being grouped by month, but I can change it to say a day to change the density of how the line chart shows the data. So far higher density for the entire year. And I can navigate through that line chart to select any particular date to see the traffic for that particular date. Next report is a session log. Session log provides us with the detailed information about each and every session that took place in any given date range. So for us, it's between January 1st and December 31st of 2022. Going back from December 31st up until January 1st of 2022, I could scroll down and see each and every session that took place in that very year. But that's a lot of scrolling. So we're going to use some filters. Before we jump onto filters, first let me explain what happens when we look at what can we see when looking at each individual session. So this is the session. First of all, we can see when it started, the date and a time. And then on the right hand side, in this gray area, we can see event by event, meaning interactions by interaction, from the very first interaction to some later interactions. So you can see page view interactions and their description, so title for the page view, page URL, the time on the page, etc., etc. Some interactions, i.e. events with the consent form, another page view, some site search, so somebody was searching on the website for something. We can see keywords, we can see category of the search, and some other site searches on the website. On the right, I could click and see something that resembles a profile of the visitor in the last 30 days. I don't see any activity in the last 30 days, and that's because it's 2024 and I'm looking at 2022. But I could click on all times and see the interactions for that very visitors throughout the entire span of time for which we track data on this website. So I could scroll down and see all the sessions of that visitors and some summary for that particular visitor. But let's go back to the session log and the log of particular session. On the left hand side we can see some information about that visitor and the session that took place on that very date. So we can see IP address. In our case it's a masked IP address, visitor ID, cookie ID, and some other information like returning visitors, the fact that it is a returning visitor, the channels, device, and the location of that very visitor. Now, going back to the before mentioned filters, at the very top of that very report, we can find some filters. So we can use these filters to look for sessions with the particular, let's say, session time, or a particular number of events in the session, or some other dimensions that we could use as a filter. If we're not happy with the built-in filtering, we can always use a segment. Next report type or section is device and software. The reason I said section is because in this section, device and software, we have few reports: device type, device brand, device model, operating system, browser language, and resolution. So I can switch between these different verticals. So let's say device brand, I see device brand here, and corresponding metrics, device model, different device models and corresponding metrics, and this is the same for the following different verticals related to device and software. By verticals we mean we can be more specific and call them dimensions. But let's go back to device and software. Now, first of all, this type of report, we have different types of reports. So table report, explorer report, or line chart report. Explorer reports provides us two reports in one. And by two means a line chart and a table. Line chart is showing us the values for the metrics that are available in the table. And so I can plot them by clicking and selecting any particular metric from the below table and show them on my line chart. We can change the grouping as well. So that's something that I was talking about in the audience overview. So go back to that session if you want to know more. However, this table report, it's not your regular table because, and the reason why we call this report an Explorer report is because this table has layers, i.e. nested dimensions, because I can click on the values of the device type, let's say smartphone, and then see smartphone's device brand. If I click further, I'll see device model. So if I click on smartphone, I see now different device brands of a smartphone: Apple, Samsung, Microsoft. If I click on, say, Samsung, I'll be able to see models. And this is why this report is being called Explorer. We can explore data. We can drill down the data. But let's go back to the report and explain what we have here. So we see dimension, value of the dimension. We see traffic, i.e. visitors and sessions. We see bounce rate, so engagement metric, some conversion metrics such as goal conversions and conversion rate. And we can see also that I've selected particular goal. I can switch between different goals or select all goals and see conversions for all goals. Finally, we have a revenue, which may or may not be tracked. If it's not, you will see zeros in here. We do, so we see value for the conversions. Next report is a locations report. Again, it's a bunch of reports related to location, meaning location from which visitors was browsing our website or an app. The location data is based on the IP address, so that might be important thing to have in mind. So we have different verticals: country, continent, city, ISP, organization, and designated market area. So let's take a look at country. We see different countries, the amount of traffic per country, so visitors and sessions, engagement based on the bounce rate per country, and conversions, conversion rate and revenue. Again, we can switch between different goals to see the conversions, not for all goals, but for a particular goal. And when browsing through different types of reports, we can see different level of details. So now we're on the level of continent, and we can drill down farther. So we can click on, let's say, North America, and then see country, then subdivision. So let's do that. So North America, now looking at United States, Canada. Let's click on Canada. And now we see a subdivision. So states within Canada. If we were to click on Alberta, we are now exploring the Alberta state. And now we see the data for cities. So we can see how we navigate on that report and what sort of values we're currently looking at by looking at the dimension that is being visible in the header of that very table. So that's the locations section. Next section is an engagement section. Here we've got 3 subsections: new versus returning, sessions, and times. Each section have some reports, or in this case, new versus returning, just a one report, which basically splits data between returning and new visitors. For e-commerce websites, we might have some more values, for example, returning customers, as opposed to just having returning visitors and new visitors. The structure of metrics looks similar to previous report: locations and device and software. So the traffic, visitors and sessions, bounce rate, conversion metrics, and revenue metric. We can switch between different goals to see the conversions per returning or new visitor. Here we have a line chart, so we can use it just like with the previous reports. And the next section is sessions section. So engagement based on sessions. Here we have few reports: session duration, days since last session, count of session, and page views in session. Let's start with the session duration. So what do we see here? We see a dimension called session time, which is grouped into different time ranges. So from 0 to 10 seconds, 11 to 30 seconds, 31 to 60 seconds, and so on. So you can see the split between session time into groups and number of sessions for each particular session time, number of page views, goal conversions. But how can we use that report? Basically, we can see how many sessions that lasted between 0 to 10 seconds, 11 to 30 seconds. We can also sort our report, let's say by conversions, and see when we've had conversions in the sessions, what was the most frequent time that visitors had to spend in order to convert a goal. So we can see between 15 to 30 minutes. We can do it for a particular goal as well. So if we choose any particular goal, we can see the split of session time for a particular goal, which may give us some clue on how long does it take for a visitor in a session to convert a particular goal. And we can sort of use this session time as a way to understand it. Next report is days since last session, which is where we can see number of days that it took for a visitor to come back to our website. So we can see days since last sessions, group in 0, 1, 2. What does it mean? It means that we've had 196 sessions in which visitor came back within the same day, 373 in which they came back within 1 day apart, 2 days apart, 3 days apart, and so on. It could be also used against goal conversions. So if we sort it against goal conversions, we can see when the visitors converted, when was the last time that they visited our website. And here we can see days since last session, 15 to 30. And that was the most frequent amount of days from a last session to the session in which the conversion happened. Again, we're looking at a particular goal, but you can switch between different goals. And that's how you can use this particular report. Next report is count of sessions. Count of session provides us with the dimension called session number. Now, session number basically tells us what was the session number. So if the visitor comes to our website for the first time, the session number is always number 1. If it's for the second time, the session number is 2. Third time, number 3. So all visitors that have number 2, 3, 4 and higher, those are likely to be returning visitors because that's not their first session. So how can we use that report? Well, basically we can see how many sessions we've had for sessions where the visitors was for the first time, second, and so on. But again, we can check it against a goal. So how many sessions it takes for a visitor to convert a car loan apply now goal. So you can see 311 conversions happen with between 15th and 25th session, 182 between 9th and 14th session, and then 118 between 26th and 50th session. So that's how we can use that report. Last report in sessions is pages in session. In here we can see pages in session group dimension, which represents the number of pages in a session. So 0, 1, 2, or ranges between 6 and 7 pages in session. And here we can see the number of such sessions. So if we're talking about, let's say 5, that's 5 pages in session, and we've had 876 such sessions. And we can see it here. Now you might be wondering, what does it mean 0? It's a rather edge case. That's why we have 4 sessions with 0 pages in session, and it basically is related to the session elapsed time. Session elapsed time is the time in which we end the one session, and if the visitor is still on a website but is inactive for longer than 30 minutes and then come back and becomes active, let's say they scroll on the page but don't reload the page, meaning they don't generate a page view event, but they might generate some other event, like for example, in our case, a scroll event. We recognize that new session, but we don't account for new pages, any new pages. So that's why 0 pages in session. Well, obviously in that kind of session, after that scroll, they would probably need to close the page and become inactive. It doesn't account for a lot of session. As you can see, it's just 4 in our case, but it does happen. So now you know what it means. But how can we use this report, this pages in session? Basically, pages are basically quite important engagement events, meaning if we have a lot of pages, it means that the engagement in a session is quite high. We can use it against goals, not only the amount of pages in a session, but we can also use it against goals. So you can see how many pages visitor has to go to in order to convert any particular goal. So we've had 282 conversions with the amount of 8 to 10 pages, and then 249 with the amount between 11 to 14. And this can tell us whether it's easy or not easy to convert a goal in a session. If the number of pages in session is low, it might be indicate that it's quite easy for a visitor to convert a goal. This obviously depends on the type of goal and the visitor and many other factors, but it's a good start for exploring engagement based on pages in session. Last section under engagement is times. In this report, which is just a one report, we can see the engagement based on the number of sessions for a given time in a day or a night in given date range. So between 12 a.m. until 11 p.m. And how many sessions in given date range we've had for a particular time. And time is given per local time, so whatever time zone we've selected for a particular property, or server time, which is the server time of where you host your website. Next section is custom dimensions section, which shows us data for custom dimensions. So Piwik PRO allows you to track a lot of dimensions out of the box, like location, device, and software. We've seen those dimensions just a moment ago. Custom dimension, on the other hand, is a dimension that we decided to track, meaning we decided that we want to collect some additional values from our website. Like, for example, next to page URLs and page titles, we decided that when visitor goes to our blog, we're going to collect blog category and the values for dimension block category might be insurance, finance, product, money tips, or some other values. So it's website specific dimension, not always or well never tracked out of the box, something specific to what you want to track. And now as for this report, in here we can switch between different custom dimension types, like block category is one of them, but that could be something else, block date, or something like loan type or gender, or any other values that we would like to track from the website about visitors or about the website. Those could be additional parameters that we don't track yet from events. So there would be many applications for custom dimensions, and this particular report shows us the value for all different types of dimensions. This is not the best report for analysis, but good for checking whether the data is coming through, because it's difficult to predict what sort of metrics will be useful for any given custom dimension, because each of those custom dimensions are having specific context in which we would analyze them. So for that context, we would create custom report, or perhaps use custom dimension as a filter. So not necessarily for reporting purposes, but for filtering purposes. Custom variables is another report. It shows similar data to custom dimension. Custom variables, it's an obsolete functionality of Piwik in Piwik PRO, similar to custom dimensions, but soon will be deprecated. So even though you can see the report, I would not recommend using custom variables in Piwik PRO. So let's jump on to consent report. In consent section, we'll be able to see data about consent. So consent, decision about the consent. We may have visitors that seen the consent form, that's the impression, give us the full consent, that's the number for full consents. Any consents, meaning at least one permission was given, but not all. No decision, so no decision was given, meaning ignored consent forms, or no consent, meaning visitor did not give us the permission to be tracked. Then consents by types. So we have different types of consents here, from analytics through A/B testing, conversion tracking, etc. Now, you may not use all of them, so you might not see data. If you don't use marketing automation consent type, you might see here all the time 0, because you don't use it, no consents. No data for that type of consent is being visible. So we can see how many consents we've been given for each consent type. Then consent form interaction. So on our form, there are a few buttons that can be clicked: close button, reject all button, agree to all, and save choices button. And we can see the number of sessions in which those buttons were clicked and the number of clicks on each of those buttons. And that's the end of the audience section. Let's move on to the acquisition section. Acquisition section is all about where the traffic is coming from when they arrive on our website. We have few sections here: channels, search engines, websites and social, campaigns, and also to Google Search Console and Google Ads, which are reports that will show you data if you have integration with Google Search Console and Google Ads, and Piwik PRO, which combines data from those platforms and Piwik PRO platform. But let's start with the channel report. Channels report is a report that shows us the data for all different channels through which visitors arrive on our website without filters, like in case of these reports, to which we're gonna get in a moment: search engines, website, social, and campaigns. We have the isolated filtered data for campaigns, website, social, or search engine. In here, we see them all. Channels in particular shows us the breakdown of a dimension channel, which may have 5 values. Direct entry, which means that the visitor entered the website either by typing the URL into the browser or by clicking on a bookmark link that gets visitors to our website. So quite often visitors that already are familiar with our website. Search engine, which means that the organic traffic from search engines such as Google or Bing or DuckDuck. Social, which means the traffic from social media channels such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Website, so traffic from external websites. and campaign, which means that we used UTM parameters or PK parameters to recognize visitors that they're coming from a campaign. There's also another case scenario when we recognize Google Click ID, perhaps without UTMs. In this case, we would still recognize it as a campaign. But how do we use this kind of report? Well, first we can check the performance of the channel based on the amount of traffic, amount of visitors or amount of sessions that this channel is driving. Then we can look at the bounce rate. So if the bounce rate is high, this means that the traffic that is coming from a particular channel is of low quality, meaning visitors don't tend to stay on the website to see subsequent URL or to generate more than one page view. That's basically what is a bounced session. If the bounce rate is low, and that's a relative number, so there's no specific number that means it's low, but if the bounce rate tends to be low when compared to other channels, this means that the quality of that traffic based on that kind of engagement is better than the other channels. But the ultimate metric is goal conversions, because goal conversions are interactions that we want visitors to perform on our website. And if we do see a lot of conversions, then that means the channel is performing well in the context of that very report. We can also check it against conversion rate or revenue, which means similar things to goal conversion. Next report is source medium, which is very similar. We don't have filtered data, we see all traffic, but we see more details. So source medium gives us higher granularity of information when it comes to where the visitors are coming from. So social media is broken down here into Facebook, LinkedIn, campaigns is broken down into newsletter, banner, video, organic traffic from search engines being broken down into Bing and Google. So we see far more details, but the analysis is similar. We look at the amount of traffic from per source medium, bounce rate, goal conversion rate, revenue. We can also select any particular goal if we want to be even more specific about the performance analysis per particular source medium. Then there's a search engines report, which shows us the breakdown of different search engines. So we now have filtered data for search engines. No other channels are being shown here. And that lets us estimate the performance of organic traffic from search engines. In our case, it's just Bing and Google, but in reality, you would normally see more than just the two search engines. And again, we can evaluate based on the number of traffic, bounce rate, and conversions. But also, we can dive deeper and click on those values and see what is the performance of different pages when it comes to, in this case, Google search results. So not only based on traffic and bounce rate and goal conversions, but also which URLs are driving the most traffic, which may mean that those URLs are ranking high in those search engines for one or many different keywords. Next report section is websites and social, which includes two separate tabs for websites and for social media, i.e. social. Let's start with the websites. So websites report provides information about the external traffic from third-party websites other than search engines or social media and cannot be considered as a campaign. So in here, we will be able to see the domain and as a source medium domain and information that it's a referral, the amount of traffic for each of those values, bounce rate and conversion rate. So we can see which particular domain or website contributes significantly to our traffic and whether we get any conversions from those websites. Some of those websites, third-party websites, may include our own websites if they are being tracked outside of the context of this particular property. So that's a normal occurrence. Then if we were to click on any of these values, we may be able to see refer URL. So if I click on that, I am able to see full URL. However, what is important to know here is that some third-party websites may restrict the information we are getting from them, and rather than seeing the full URL, we are able to see just a domain. So rather than seeing the exact URL from which visitor came from on that particular website, we may be able just to see the domain. This is mainly due to the refer policy of those third-party websites. Next up is social, which includes all different social media platforms that are driving us traffic to the website. So there'll be number of visitors, session, but also bounce rate and conversions, just like with the previous reports. Again, we can see the performance of each social media platform. This includes social media platforms and organic traffic from those social media platforms. So if we use some sort of UTM parameters for social media, say posts, that would be considered as a campaign, but we'll get to campaign in just a moment. Next report under acquisition section is campaigns, which shows the data from your campaigns. And those tabs here correspond to the parameters that you may have used with your campaign. So parameters such as campaign name, source, medium, keywords or terms. If you use UTMs, in here under keywords, you will see terms parameter. So in Piwik PRO, terms equals keywords. So bear that in mind. And then contents and campaign ID. So that's how you can switch between different levels of your campaign using those different tabs. Now, as I mentioned earlier, traffic will be considered as campaign when campaign parameters were used, i.e. were included in the link to our website. That would include UTM parameters or PK parameters. Now, the question often arises, which ones should we use, UTMs or PK parameters? And there are many advantages of using UTMs, like the fact that UTMs are being used by other platforms and can be appended in campaign links automatically, for example, by Facebook or by Google advertising platforms, or the fact that you may have used UTMs in the past campaigns and they will still be recognized by Piwik PRO just fine. So there may be no good reason for you to switch to PK parameters. However, in some very rare instances, UTMs might be blocked by some browser extensions. If this is something that you see as an issue, you could consider using PK parameters, which may be less prone to such a blocking. We made them available for such occasion. Moreover, you can customize campaign parameters and come up with your own parameters. I'll drop the link to the article with more info under this video. Now, there's one more instance in which we will recognize traffic as a campaign traffic, and that is when you use Google Click ID, meaning in Google Ads platform, you will use so-called auto tagging, and Google will append to the links, campaign links, Google Click ID. That is something that is being used by Google Ads. We will recognize that such parameter is in the URL, but if there's no UTMs, what you're going to see here under campaign name is Google Ads Unknown. So there will be a value somewhere here that says Google Ads Unknown. If you click on that value, that way you will get to source medium, you will see Google cost per click or something similar. Now, it's still some information about the fact that traffic came from campaign, but you probably want to know all other information. So exactly which campaign that was, not just the fact that it's a Google Ads Unknown. If it's a banner or a search result, you probably want that from source medium, and then keywords, contents, campaign ID. That information will not be available in such instance. So bear in mind, we would recommend you to use UTMs or PK parameters at all time. As for using this report for your analysis, again, you can switch between different levels of your campaign in here. And analyze, again, number of traffic. So we can, from campaign name, you can switch to source medium and see which source medium got you the most traffic, bounce rate for particular source medium, conversions, and so on. So you can get quite detailed information about the performance of each campaign on the level of campaign name, source medium, keywords, contents, campaign ID, and so on. Another report under acquisition is Google Search Console. This report will show you data only if you integrate Google Search Console with Piwik PRO data, meaning you will be able to see data from Google Search Console in Piwik PRO reports. So the pages that are ranking in Google search will be considered as a session entry URL, which correspond to Piwik PRO's dimension called session entry URL, i.e. landing page URL. And then you'll be able to see the number of impressions in Google Search Console, number of clicks, and then data from Piwik PRO such as number of sessions, bounce rate, average time on page, and Go conversions. What is important to know about this report is that the data that we get from Google Search Console is aggregated, so you will not be able to pinpoint to particular session in Piwik PRO. You'll be able just to analyze it on an aggregated level. And then you can switch to keywords where you'll be able to see keywords and see landing pages for particular keywords, devices, countries. So very worthwhile having that integration with Piwik PRO in your Piwik PRO account. Last report under acquisition section is Google Ads. Again, just like with Google Search Console, that's an integration that Piwik PRO provides. So you will be able to see the data from Google Ads in Piwik PRO and mix that data with Piwik PRO data. So you'll be able to see the data on the account level, campaign level, ad group level, and so on. And you'll be able to switch between different levels of your campaign analysis. Now, important to note is that the Google Ads integration, when we pull data from Google Ads, it's a data that is we receive on an aggregated level. So you will not be able to link any particular session from Piwik PRO with data from Google Ads. It's an aggregated level that we pull the data from Google Ads. So that's one thing. Another thing, in order for that integration to work properly and accurately, you need to use not only auto tagging, i.e. Google Click ID in Google Ads, but also parameters such as UTMs, and thanks to those two, we will be able to link data from Piwik PRO with the data from Google Ads. So those two are prerequisites for us to be able to accurately link the data from Google Ads and Piwik PRO. Next section within the Reports tab of the Analytics is Behavior section. In this behavior section, we'll find a bunch of different reports which are related to different interactions that might be taking place on your website or an app. And the very first section, called Pages, consists of few reports related to pages analysis. We are taking a slightly different approach to each of these reports. And let's start with the Pages report and page titles, which are very similar. There's only one key difference between pages and page titles, and that is the dimension that we use here. The metrics are the same between those two reports. So if we take a page URL, we're going to see the values of URLs of each and every page. Whereas under page titles, we're going to see the titles of URLs. The advantage of using title is that we see the human-friendly names of pages. In some cases, however, some pages may not have a title, so that might be a drawback. Whereas pages show us the URL, and again, some pages may not be really human-friendly. That's not the case on this website, but sometimes we have values which are numbers and letters. This may be sometimes troublesome to identify a particular page. Nonetheless, the advantage is that we have unique values all the time, so there's no issue like with the page titles. Again, Metrics are the same, so let's unpack those metrics that we have here. Page views is the number of times particular page was visited. So if the visitor goes to a particular page multiple times in a session or across different sessions, every time when they go to that particular page, that number increases. So 184, this is the number of times this page was visited in given date range by all visitors that had been to our website. Unique pages, on the other hand, we're going to count page views as well, but only once in a session. So if the visitor in a given session goes to a particular URL more than once, we're still going to count it as a one unique page view. Then we have entries, which basically is the number of times particular URL was a landing page, meaning initiated the session, started the session, and that's how through this particular URL visitor had access the website. Then we have a page bounce rate, which is different, slightly different from bounce rate. Bounce rate is normally used for acquisition reports or session scope reports. But when we use page URL and page title, it's far better to use page bounce rate to get the more accurate data. Then we have average time on page, which basically gives us the average time spent on a particular page in any given date range. And finally, exit rate. Exit rate is a metric that shows the percentage of times particular page was last in the session. Next report is entry pages report, which uses session entry URL. You can think about session entry URL dimension as a landing page URL dimension, meaning it shows us the values of our landing pages, URLs of our landing pages. And that's why it is paired together with the metric, a primary metric in this report called entries, because entries shows us the number of times particular URL was a landing page. Then we see a bounce rate, additionally pages and unique pages for a context, but those are metrics that are normally used for page URLs and page titles dimensions. Then we have average time on page, which may also be insightful, but most importantly, as opposed to pages and page title report, session entry URL can be used against goal conversions, meaning we can see the performance of our landing pages not only based on the amount of traffic that entered via particular landing page, but also based on the number of conversion it led to, meaning when a visitor entered via this URL, we ended up having 14 conversions. Obviously, we can select any particular goal for that analysis, but that's how we can use something that we cannot use with the event scope dimensions such as page URL or page title. Session entry URL is a session scoped dimension. Next report, exit pages, where we see page URL dimension against exits, which is the number of times visitors left the session via particular URL. And for context, we see how many times, how many sessions we've had when that particular URL was visited. Not necessarily as a last, but within session. Then from exits and sessions, we can estimate exit rate, which is a percentage. And for context, we've got unique page views and average time on page. Page speed report might be very useful for someone who wishes to identify pages with which there might be some issues. More specifically, if the average page generation time, i.e. how long the page loads on a visitor's device, on average, if that number is high, and there are a lot of such instances based on the number of, say, page views, which is another metric that we have in that report, then we could potentially investigate what could be causing it. Perhaps looking into devices that were used in those sessions, perhaps looking into the browsers that were used. We can also see the impact of that based on page bounce rate, average time on page, and conversion metrics. Another report under behavior section is internal search. And in here we have two tabs, search keywords and search categories. Both reports are related to searches on your website. In here we see keywords that are being typed into the search. Here are the number of times particular keyword was typed in any given date range. And then here we can see the result for each and every keyword that was typed in. So this report may help you identify the most interesting topics, or perhaps identify some content that may not have many results for when someone is typing in. So a lot of applications of this kind of report. If you want to see data based on categories rather than keywords, presuming that your search does have categories, then you could use it here as well. Next report, Outlinks, is a report that shows you outlink URLs and number of clicks on those URLs. So outlink URL is a URL on our website on which visitor can click on, and then visitor will be redirected to external page. External in the context of this particular property. And then we have count of those clicks, unique count, i.e. unique outlinks, meaning if the visitor clicks on this particular URL 3 times in a session, we're going to count it as a 1 unique outlink, but 3 outlinks. Next report is downloads, which is another section under behavior, and it shows us a simple report that with the dimension download URL, which shows values of files that visitor can download from our website with the extensions such as zip or PDF or CSV or some other extensions. So those are the values of the URLs, and here we can see the count of those clicks. So unique downloads are being counted once per session, whereas downloads every time when a visitor clicks on a particular link. Next section under behavior is custom events. And in here we've got 3 reports: custom event categories, event action, and event names. Custom event is an event or interaction, however we want to call it, that we track that is often not being tracked out of the box. It is split in those 3 sections, which are somehow dictated by the structure of the custom event. What do I mean by that? It means that whenever we set up custom event, we do need to come up with the parameters that will describe particular interaction, and that will be category, action. Those are 2 that have to be used with each and every custom event. And then there's a name and a value, which are both optional. And that's how our custom event will be described, by using those parameters. Now, those parameters can be static, meaning have constant values. Like, for example, any Heatmap custom event would have category Heatmap event. It's not dynamic value. This value is being fixed. And as much as category is often fixed, if we go deeper into, let's say, action, those value might be dynamic. So if we have CTA, we'll have a click. But if we were to click on click, we have get in touch. Now, in here we have just 1 value. But in this case, the name of a custom event provides us with the name of a button. Now, in our case, it's just a 1 value, but if we were to have some other button names like submit or contact us or click here or whatever the name that are on the button, we would see different values here, meaning that the name would be dynamic. So it's up to us what is the category, action, and name, and whether those values are being dynamic, whatever makes sense for our website. But then moving to the metrics, we have custom events, which is the number, in this case, of clicks in the get in touch button. And unique custom events is the number of unique clicks where we count only click on the get in touch button once per session, once per visit. And finally, value, which is optional, and it's a numerical value. In this case, it says no data because that parameter was not used for this particular custom event. Whenever we see this parameter to be fit, we can use it, but we don't have to. The same is for custom event name parameter. Next section under behavior is content performance. A content performance report does not show data out of the box. This requires additional setup on your website by adding specific CSS classes or attributes to the elements that you want to track. And by tracking, we mean the number of content impressions, unique content impressions, content interactions, and interaction rate. All these metrics. Now, how's that different from other interactions? So let's compare it to PageView, which we can track on Pages reports. If someone goes to a particular page, they may see an element. Now, they may see that element only after they scroll down to that particular element, and only then it is being counted as an impression, whereas PageView counts a number of times when the visitor went to a particular URL. So that's not quite the same. Another use case would be if we have a page URL under which we serve dynamic content, meaning every now and then there will be different type of content served on that particular page. Now, looking at the metric page views, we might not get the accurate data on that. Whereas when we count the content impressions, we will only count whenever that element was visible on the screen. So only when the actual content was visible. So this would be the use case for content performance reports. Now, as for reports itself, we have content name, content piece, and we can dive deeper into the different parameters that would describe our content that we want to track. What is quite useful to know is that every time when someone interacts with the content, that is being called content interaction. And then towards the end, we get the content interaction. So in other words, if we have content and someone clicks on it, you could think about content interaction rate as click-through rate for the content piece. Last under behavior is Heatmap, which is not a report, but just a place where you can find all useful links related to Heatmap. So what do I mean by Heatmap? Piwik PRO provides a free site inspector extension to the Chrome browser, which lets you view your website with a Heatmap layer on it. If you were to set up the Heatmap tracking to work with the site inspector extension, you can click on this button that will redirect you to the tag manager, to particular tag in the tag manager where you can set it up, and then link to the tracker debugger for debugging purposes, and perhaps article to our help center that sort of guides you through the entire process of setting up a heat map. Next section is conversion, which has just a one report, attribution. Attribution report lets you analyze conversions in the context of multiple sessions rather just one, because when we look at the acquisition section and let's say look at channels or search engine, what we see the traffic from each particular channel, and then bounce rate, and then number of conversions, but the conversions are being assigned just to one channel, so one credit for one channel. Whereas in many cases, visitors might be visiting our website multiple times across multiple sessions. If that's the case, we could think about those different sessions and perhaps different channels in each given session that preceded the conversion as also contributing to the conversions. If that's the case, we can use attribution modeling report, where we can play with the logic of how that credit is being given, like last channel that contributed to the conversion, or first channel that contributed to the conversion, or perhaps spread evenly using the linear model. Now, I just wanted to explain you the possibilities. The attribution report is probably a session on its own, and I will drop a link under this video once I create the video on that very report where I expand on its possibilities. Next section, website performance, has a section page timings, and in here we've got a few tabs: page URL, location, devices, and browsers. Now, those reports allow you to see how fast your site loads in visitors' browser. So we can see median time to interact, median time to redirection, and some other parameters and values for median server response time, median time until DOM is ready, and a number of page views for those. In here we see URLs, but we can also switch to location, devices, and browsers. So quite useful report for your web developers. Next section is Video Analytics section, which provides you with several reports related to video tracking. Now, video tracking is not something that is being tracked out of the box, but we have easy to implement tag templates in our tag manager that can be used for YouTube embedded videos or HTML5 videos if you have those on your website. Now, as for reports, we have a bunch of different reports, so let's take a look at video overview. And here we have video title and some metrics such as plays, unique plays, visitors, sessions, and we can change the dimension of this very report, meaning the metrics will stay the same, but the dimension will be different, and we can switch to country, so we can see the number of, let's say, plays by country, by device, by traffic source, by the player, by the video events. Next report is video flows, which we can see a very detailed interactions with the video player. So whenever visitor is changing the volume or progresses on the video, etc., etc. Then we have video engagement, and here we can watch the progress of the video. So if someone clicks on the play, we can see number of sessions in which a play button was clicked, then how many of those plays sort of ended up in a 25% progress on the video, 50% progress, 75%, and watched a full video. Play to watch, you can see how many visitors who played clicked on the play button actually watched the full video, so simplified version of the previous report. And then finally, video timings, where we can see all different timing interactions and their timing depending on which report we're going to be looking at. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to our channel. Check the description below to find some useful links like free Piwik PRO sign up page, community forum page, and links to related videos. Until next time.